If you love the stories behind the books, what the authors really meant, what they risked, what they hid in plain sight, subscribe to Page and Flame. New stories every week. Animal Farm. Orwell wrote in a preface that was suppressed and not published until after his death, was the first book in which he tried, with full consciousness of what he was doing, to fuse political purpose and artistic purpose. The political purpose was specific. He had been in Spain during the Civil War, fighting on the Republican side, and had seen firsthand how Soviet-aligned communists had betrayed and destroyed the non-Stalinist left. He had watched the Moscow show trials of the 1930s, in which Stalin's former comrades confessed to impossible crimes and were shot. He had read the reports of the Ukrainian famine, the Holodomor, which Soviet propaganda denied and Western sympathizers refused to believe. He wanted to write something that could not be dismissed as propaganda, that could not be easily categorized, that would reach people who wouldn't read a political essay. So he wrote a fairy story. But every character was real. Old Major, the elderly prize boar whose dream of animal liberation begins the revolution, was a composite, partly Karl Marx, who wrote the theory, partly Lenin, who led the revolution in 1917 and died in 1924 before his ideals were fully corrupted. Old Major's speech to the animals, a vision of a world without human masters, where the animals would own the fruits of their labor, is a direct parody of Marx's Communist Manifesto, translated into the language of the barnyard. He dies before the revolution happens. The dream outlasts him. Whether it would have survived him is the question Orwell was asking. Napoleon, the large, fierce Berkshire boar who becomes the farm's dictator, was Joseph Stalin. The parallels are not subtle. Napoleon drives out his rival Snowball, who is Leon Trotsky, the intellectual, the internationalist, the man who actually commanded the Red Army in the Civil War before Stalin maneuvered him into exile. Snowball is blamed for every subsequent failure on the farm, just as Trotsky was blamed in Soviet propaganda for every problem in the USSR from the moment of his exile until Stalin's death. Napoleon surrounds himself with dogs, puppies he takes from their mothers as infants and raises in secret, who become his private security force. These are the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, who enforced Stalin's purges, ran the Gulag system, and shot people who had confessed to being Snowball's agents. The show trials are there too. Animals confess to crimes of sabotage and disloyalty and are immediately killed. The confessions are impossible, the crimes are fabricated, but the animals confess anyway, exactly as the old Bolsheviks had confessed in Moscow in the 1930s, for reasons that historians and psychologists still debate. Boxer the horse is the working class, loyal, strong, not very intellectually equipped, willing to believe that if things are going wrong it must be because he hasn't worked hard enough. His motto, "I will work harder." Napoleon is always right. When Boxer breaks down and is no longer useful, Napoleon sells him to the knacker, the horse slaughterer, for money to buy whiskey. The pigs drink the whiskey. The other animals are told Boxer died in hospital, peacefully, with Napoleon's name on his lips. It is one of the cruelest scenes in 20th century English literature. It is also exactly what happened to the Soviet workers who had built the system and then been consumed by it. The ending is the part Orwell almost changed. In the final scene, the pigs and the human farmers are playing cards together, and the other animals watching through the window can no longer tell which is which. The faces of the pigs and the humans have become indistinguishable. Orwell had considered a different ending, one in which the animals finally rose up and overthrew the pigs. He rejected it. He wanted to make a point that was harder and more specific, that revolutions tend to reproduce what they replace, that the people who seize power in the name of liberation tend, over time, to become the thing they liberated others from. He wrote Animal Farm in 1943. Stalin was still alive. The Soviet Union was still presented in the Western press as an inspiration to working people everywhere. Orwell didn't care. He wrote what he saw. T.S. Eliot, in his rejection letter, had written that the book was impressive, but that what it needed was more positive pigs. More positive pigs. As if that was the point he had missed. Orwell kept the letter. He didn't respond to it. If the books that said what no one wanted to hear and turned out to be right are the ones that stay with you. Subscribe to Page and Flame. There are more waiting.